forth during the day, which is the sun, and when the sun as well, it sets. A Lord, the Lord of the worlds, the one who controls everything, he should not be someone or something that can be overwhelmed by something else. When the night comes, the sun is gone. When the day comes, the stars and the moon is gone. Allah Azza wa Jal is in fact the creator of all these things. And so it is Allah Azza wa Jal who we should be worshipping. And this is something that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he realized this from a very young age. So inshallah we're going to be mentioning some of the virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And after mentioning some of these virtues, we are going to also then go into the story of what gives him this great status in Islam, as well as with Allah Azza wa Jal, and all the different tests that he had to go through. Inshallah, we're going to take them as the days come along, because the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is a great story and has been mentioned multiple times in the Quran. Some related to what we're going to talk about today, and others related to other instances in his life, with his son Ismail alayhi salam, or with his wife, or with his nephew Lut alayhi salam. And so there are many, many stories related to Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran, but we're inshallah going to focus on the first part of the story, which is him being given this guidance by Allah Azza wa Jal, him realizing that what people are worshipping are things that should not be worshipped. In fact, they should be turning to the Lord of these created beings, the Lord of these created things, whether it's the idols, whether it's the sun, the moon, the stars, all these things, these are created beings, whether they're created by us or they're created by Allah Azza wa Jal. And so we should be turning to Allah Azza wa Jal, our creator, the creator of all the things around us. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, he has described Ibrahim alayhi salam as an ummah in the Quran. And we don't really find this for anyone else in the Quran, them being called an ummah. We hear this word a lot of times, ummah, we as an ummah, we as the Muslim ummah. And sometimes we may not understand what this word means. There are multiple meanings for this word, and from amongst them is being a leader, someone that we should be following, someone who is an example for us, because of the things that they do, they have set an example for us that we should be following as well. So Allah Azza wa Jal, he says in the Quran, Inna Ibrahim kana ummah. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was an ummah. And the obvious meaning is there in the sense that he was a leader and he is someone that we should follow. But even the other meaning holds true for Ibrahim alayhi salam. When we're talking about being a nation, the tests that Ibrahim alayhi salam had to go through, the great iman that he had, the way that he called his people to Islam, all these things, they actually make him like a nation by himself. And so in much the same way that we are an ummah, the Muslims as a whole, Ibrahim alayhi salam, just that one individual, was an ummah as well. He was a nation. He had the worth of a nation. And so, inshallah, we're going to cover some of these stories that will enlighten us to see how he was a leader and how he was also a nation unto himself. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla, he continues and says, قَانِتًا لِلَّهِ حَنِيفًا وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. He was fearful and he was obedient. All the different tests that Allah Azza wa Jalla gave to him, he would always do whatever he was told, no matter how difficult it may seem, no matter how personal it was to him, no matter how attached he was with what he was being asked to sacrifice for Allah's sake. Hanifan, he was also Hanif, and we see this being mentioned multiple times, not just in the Quran, but also in the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ. When Allah Azza wa Jal, he says that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was Hanif Muslim, what he means by that, or by the word Hanif, is he left the paths that led to all evil. He left all the paths that would lead to falsehood. and he stayed upon the path that led to the truth, and he was a Muslim, he was someone who submitted himself to Allah Azza wa Jal as well. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And he never, from the start, was someone who would worship or join partners with Allah Azza wa Jal. شَاكِرًا لِأَنْعُمِهِ. He was very grateful for all the blessings that he was given. Not just grateful with his tongue, grateful with his heart, and also grateful with his actions. The actions that he would do showed that he was grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal. Those blessings that he had, he would use them in the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. Then Allah Azza wa Jal, he says, اجتباه وهداه إلى صراط مستقيم. Allah Azza wa Jal, he picked him, he selected him. Out of all the people on this earth, the messengers, there are people who Allah Azza wa Jal picks. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, he mentions this specifically for Ibrahim alayhi salam over here. He says, اجتباه وهداه إلى صراط مستقيم. That Allah Azza wa Jal, he picked him, and then he guided him to the straight path, the path of Allah Azza wa Jal, the path that leads to Jannah through the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, he continues and says, وَآتَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً. We had given him in this world lots of goodness. What is this goodness? There are various examples of what this goodness is. From amongst that is that from the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salam came the rest of the prophets. Any prophet or messenger who came after Ibrahim alayhi salam, they're all from his descendants. Another hasana that he has, another hasana or another good thing that he received in this world is that we talk good about him. Whether you're talking about the Jews, whether you're talking about the Christians, the Muslims, people all mention him in a very positive manner. In fact, now people also call him Abu al-Anbiya. He is the father of the prophets, because after him, from his progeny came Ishaq and Ismail alayhim as-salam, and then from them came many, many prophets: Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Dawood, Sulaiman, Yaqub, Yusuf, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. All these are from the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And even in the hereafter, he will be from the Salihin in the sense that he will have great reward, he will have a great rank in Jannah. Then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions another merit which might be the greatest merit that Ibrahim alayhi salam possesses. ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ. Allah Azza wa Jal is now addressing the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he says, we revealed to you, O Muhammad, أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا. What did Allah Azza wa Jal reveal to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Follow the path, follow the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so we are being commanded to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam, to be on the same path, to be on the same set of beliefs as Ibrahim alayhi salam. And as we all know, on the Day of Judgment, the best ummah will be the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so if we are commanded to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam, you can imagine the honor that is there for Ibrahim alayhi salam, that the greatest nation ever produced, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas, that this nation is also a nation that has been commanded to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam. Hanifan wa ma kana min al-mushrikeen. And Allah Azza wa Jal, he mentions this in many other places as well. He says in another place in the Quran, he says, ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was not from the Yahud, he was not from the Nasara, ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما. Rather, he was Hanif, and as we mentioned, Hanif is someone who leaves off all paths that lead to falsehood, and instead stick to the truth, stick to the path that leads to the truth. And he was a Muslim as well in the sense that he submitted to Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And he was not of those who associated partners with Allah Azza wa Jal. He was not of those who had these idols established that would be worshipped in place of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Hanif is someone who is sincere purely for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. They do that which pleases Allah Azza wa Jal. They leave off all the paths that lead to falsehood, and they follow the path of Islam, which is submission to Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, we had mentioned just in the beginning that he was from ulul azm min ar-rusul. He was from those who were the best of the prophets and messengers, those who had conviction, and those who were tested greatly as well. And out of these 5 messengers and prophets that we mentioned, Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Out of these 5, the greatest is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He's the greatest of creation. And then after that is Ibrahim alayhi salam. In fact, there was a time when a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he said to him, O khayrul bariyah, O the best of humankind, O best of mankind. And despite the fact that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the best of mankind, out of his humility he says, that is Ibrahim alayhi salam. So that means that after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the best is Ibrahim alayhi salam. He is also someone for whom we make dua for every single salah. We call it the salat al-Ibrahimiyya, or the durood sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. And so in every single salah, we are including him in the dua. We're including him in the prayer. And so you can imagine the great honor. There are billions of Muslims who have lived, and inshallah billions more who are going to live. In our present time, we have over 1 billion Muslims. So imagine how many people have prayed this salah, the 5 daily prayers that we pray, and the extra sunan and the nafil salahs that we also have. And then just imagine that in every single salah, we are sending our peace and blessings upon Ibrahim alayhi salam. We're praying for him, we're including him in our prayer as well. He is also someone that resembled the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Once the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he was trying to describe Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said, he resembles me the most. He resembles the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam the most. And so this in itself is also a virtue, because we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's the greatest of mankind. And so if someone resembles him, whether it's in actions or even resemblance, physical resemblance, then that too is an honor, inshallah, for them. Allah Azza wa Jal has described that he took Ibrahim alayhi salam to be someone very beloved to him. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. And Khalil over here means someone who is greatly loved. And this has only been used by Allah Azza wa Jal to describe his love for Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so we've probably all heard the title of Ibrahim alayhi salam, him being referred to as Khalilullah, Khalilur Rahman. He is the beloved of Allah Azza wa Jal. Even though the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is known to be from the very beloved of Allah Azza wa Jal, normally this title is used for Ibrahim alayhi salam. Another great blessing or another great virtue that he was given was that, and I think we mentioned this, all the prophets who came after Ibrahim alayhi salam, all the messengers who came after Ibrahim alayhi salam, they are all from his descendants. And so we all know that when we die, our book of deeds is closed. And it's only through certain means that we can continue to be receiving good deeds, insha'Allah. And from those are children, righteous children who make dua for us. And so if all these prophets and messengers who come after Ibrahim alayhi salam are from his children, and they're making dua for him, you can imagine the great rank, insha'Allah, that he will receive in Jannah. Another virtue of his is also that he will be the first person to be clothed on the Day of Judgment. When we are raised up from the dead on the Day of Judgment, we're not going to have any clothes on us. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he will be the first to be clothed. And there are various opinions as to why this is the case. Regardless of what the reason is, we know this to be a virtue of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And this is a great honor for him to be the first to be clothed. And not just that, for it also to be mentioned in this life through the speech of the Prophet ﷺ that he will be the first to be clothed on the Day of Judgment. Allah Azza wa Jal also honored him by making him and his son build the Kaaba. The Kaaba was built at the time of Adam alayhi salam, and then because Mecca is a valley and where the Kaaba is actually right at the middle of the valley. Anytime it would rain, anytime there were floods, you can imagine that the Kaaba would deteriorate further and further, whether it's wind erosion, whether it's water erosion, and so there was nothing left there. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was commanded by Allah Azza wa Jal to go and rebuild the Kaaba. And so he and Ismail alayhi salam built the Kaaba, and since then it has been rebuilt many times, it has been reconstructed many times, but it has existed since that time till our time as well. And so these are all great virtues, and then to top it off, another great virtue that he has is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the answer to the dua that he made at the conclusion of him constructing the Kaaba when he and his son completed building the Kaaba. They didn't turn to Allah Azza wa Jal thinking that they had done him a great favor. They turned to Allah Azza wa Jal hoping and praying that this act of theirs gets accepted by Allah Azza wa Jal. Hoping and praying that this act is something that will be on the scale of their good deeds on the Day of Judgment. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam also takes this opportunity to make dua, and he asks Allah Azza wa Jal to establish from amongst them a prophet and a messenger who will recite the verses of Allah Azza wa Jal to the end of it, and we know this to be the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, let's talk about Ibrahim alayhi salam's story. What is Ibrahim alayhi salam's story? A lot of us, we have heard about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and we know that when we go for Hajj or when we go for Umrah, there are many things that we might be doing in that Umrah or in that Hajj that have a connection with the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. When we're doing tawaf, we're doing tawaf around the Kaaba that was rebuilt by Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. The two rak'ahs that we pray at the conclusion of the tawaf, we pray that behind Maqam Ibrahim, the structure that Ibrahim alayhi salam stood on to construct the Kaaba. Safa and Marwa, when we run between Safa and Marwa, that too is linked to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he is commanded to leave his family in Mecca in a barren desert. Inshallah, we will get to this in a later session. But that is the journey that the mother of Ismail alayhi salam, Hajar alayhi salam, would make, running from one hilltop to the next, looking for people, searching for water, looking for anything that would save her newborn child. Even the other rites, such as the Jamarat, that is also linked to Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. The sacrificing of the sheep, sacrificing of the animal, that too has a close link with Ibrahim alayhi salam's story. And so there are great lessons for us to learn in this, and Allah Azza wa Jal, He established these rites of Hajj for us to follow, not because we are worshipping Ibrahim alayhi salam. No, we are doing so because Allah Azza wa Jal chose to honor Ibrahim alayhi salam and to also commemorate the sacrifices that he made in this life to please Allah Azza wa Jal. And in that are many lessons for us. So when we do that, when we do these Hajj actions, we are reminded of the sacrifices, and then we too try to sacrifice whatever we have to please Allah Azza wa Jal. And so now Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a young child, he's living in a place called Babylon in present-day Iraq. And he is there with his loving family. And his father is someone who is well respected in the community as well. But he sees that everyone around him, they worship other things. They don't worship Allah Azza wa Jal. They worship idols, they worship the stars, the sun, the moon. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he can't grasp this. And so he starts to call the closest people to him towards the truth. And so the story that's mentioned is his conversation that he has with his father, Azar. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, being a prophet and a messenger, he's very merciful to the people around him. Because the messengers and prophets, they are the most merciful of the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal with the rest of creation. Their ultimate goal is the guidance of people. They hope to pass the message on to the people around them so that they too would be upon the straight path through which they can, insha'Allah, receive the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal and be saved from the punishment of the fire and enter into Jannah. And so Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the story, and he says, describing the conversation that Ibrahim alayhi salam has with his father, he starts off by addressing him with a very lovely and a very endearing term. He says, Ya abati. Now normally in the Arabic language, if you say abi, this means, oh my father. But when you say Ya abati, this is a further form of endearment. Oh my dear father. It's almost as if you're saying, oh my dear father. And so when Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is having this conversation with his father Azar, he says, Ya abati, lima ta'budu ma la yasma'u wa la yubsir wa la yughni 'anka shay'a. Why is it that you worship? And Azar was also involved in idol worship. And so he says to his father, why are you worshiping these things? They can't hear you, they can't see you, and they can't even benefit you in any way. So what benefit is there in you worshiping these idols? And he continues and says, follow me so that I may show you the straight path, so that I may show you the path that Allah Azza wa Jalla wants us to take. Then he continues and says, Ya abati, la ta'bud ash-shaytan. When you are worshiping these idols, you are also worshiping shaitan, because you are following shaitan. Shaitan is the one who has led you to the worship of these idols. He has led you astray from the worship of Allah to the worship of these idols. Idols that cannot harm you, idols that cannot benefit you, idols that don't hear, idols that don't listen, that can't see you, idols that you create with your own hands, idols that you shape yourself. And so how is it logical that these idols that you furnish or you create with your hands and you have to take care of, that then you go and worship them? If anything, if there was any life in these idols, they would be subservient to you because you were the one who created them. You were the one that looked after them. And instead, we find this weird thing that people are worshiping the idols. And then he continues and he says, Ya abati, inni akhafu an yamassaka adhabun min ar-Rahman. I fear that the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal might come upon you because of this action that you're doing, worshipping other than Allah. This is the greatest of sins. This is a sin that Allah Azza wa Jal has said He will not forgive. Any other sin, Allah may choose to forgive it if He wants to. But when we don't worship Allah, or if we associate partners with Allah Azza wa Jal, this is a sin that Allah Azza wa Jal has said He will never forgive. And so he doesn't want his father to be with shaitan. He doesn't, as he said, فَتَكُونَ لِلشَّيْطَانِ وَلِيًّا. You will be a companion with shaitan in the fire of hell. He doesn't want that for his father. Everyone loves their family members. Everyone loves their parents, their children. And they don't want any harm to come upon them. So how is it that I could let you continue doing all these things that I know for a fact will lead you to the punishment of the hellfire? And so he tries his best, using wisdom, using the best of speech, using very soft and kind words to call his father to the truth. What's the response that Ibrahim alayhi salam gets? It's actually a very unexpected response from a father to his son. He says, أَرَاغِبٌ أَنْتَ عَنْ آلِهَتِي يَا إِبْرَاهِيم. Are you going to leave these idols of mine that I worship? Are you going to disregard these idols that I have, O Ibrahim? If you don't stop doing what you're doing, which is to call me away from the worship of these idols, I'm going to stone you till you're hurt or till you die. And then he tells his son, imagine a son hearing this from their father, a son who wants good for their father, for his father, and then the father reacts by saying, "Wahjurni maliya." Just leave me. Go away from me. I don't want to see you. And so after all these harsh things and all these bad things that the father says to Ibrahim alayhi salam, the only response that Ibrahim alayhi salam has is to say, "Salamun alaykum." May peace be upon you. And then he says, I will make dua for you. May Allah Azza wa Jal forgive you. And he does so until he is commanded by Allah Azza wa Jal that he's not allowed to do so, because anyone who is a non-believer, anyone who's not a Muslim, after they die, we can't make dua for them. We can't make dua for their mercy, because Allah Azza wa Jal in a way has already told us what the outcome will be in general, without specifying people, without saying this and this person is going to go to the fire of hell. We know in general that the Muslims, they go to heaven. And those who refuse to submit to Allah Azza wa Jal, they deserve the punishment of the fire. And so at this point, if we start to make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, to have mercy on those people who live their whole lives being rebellious to Allah Azza wa Jal, who live their whole lives taking away from the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal, then that is something that Allah Azza wa Jal does not like from us. It's like someone in this life, they did something bad to you over and over and over again. And they only did bad to you. And then someone else comes to you who really loved you. And in front of you, he constantly just praises them. Or he constantly just mentions the good things about them. Or he tells you to do good to them. This is not something that we would like. And so when Allah Azza wa Jal has established that his path is the only one path that will lead to guidance, that will lead to Jannah, and all the other paths are paths that lead to destruction. Destruction for us in this world and destruction for us in the hereafter. Then Allah Azza wa Jal, he's also made it clear that if a person dies in this state, then we should not be making dua for them. And so, after he was commanded by Allah Azza wa Jal not to be making dua for his father, he stops doing so. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says something very important. He says, وَأَعْتَزِلُكُمْ وَمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to leave that which you worship. Talking about the way of life that they have established for themselves, which is the disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is enjoining partners with Allah Azza wa Jal. Not only does he leave the people, he leaves their way as well, because he realizes that there is no goodness in this way. And so this is a very important point for us. Sometimes we think that it's enough for us just to be on the truth. Yes, we have to be on the truth, but we also have to distance ourselves from the evil. We have to distance ourselves from the falsehood. And this is something that Allah Azza wa Jalla has commanded us to do many times in the Quran. And we see this in the lives of all the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jalla, that they distance themselves from falsehood. It's not enough for us to say, oh, well, we don't believe in this falsehood, but we're going to be okay with this. We're okay with it because I'm not the one doing it. No, it's something that is not pleasing to Allah. Therefore, it should not be pleasing to us either. Because anything that's not pleasing to Allah should not be pleasing to us either. And so now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he starts his da'wah to the people who live around him. And so he starts by having a conversation with them and says, what are you worshipping? مَا تَعْبُدُونَ? What are you worshipping? They say, نَعْبُدُ أَصْنَامًا فَنَظَلُّ لَهَا عَاكِفِينَ. They say, we worship these idols, and we remain committed to these idols. We remain committed to serving these idols. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he starts to ask some questions that he hopes will get them to leave the worship of these idols. He says, do these idols have the ability to listen to you? Do these idols have the ability to see you? Do these idols have the ability to benefit you in any way or to harm you in any way? And so they respond by saying, بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون. They will say, or they said, that of course they know that there is no benefit from these idols. They know these idols don't hear. They know these idols can't see them. They know these idols can't harm them or benefit them in any way. But this is the way of their forefathers. And here we see this dangerous trend that even exists amongst some Muslims. We will say that I know this is something that goes against the practices of Islam. This is something that's not pleasing to Allah. But my parents used to do this, or my ancestors used to do this, or my culture does this. We're allowed to follow our culture. But any time it goes against the religion of Islam, any time it goes against the commandments of Allah Azza wa Jal, then we have no right to be practicing that cultural practice. We leave that cultural practice off. And so their response is that we found our fathers doing this. This is the way of our forefathers, and so we're doing the same thing as well. And the logic behind that is, if we go against what our fathers are doing, number one, that's like saying that we know better than them. And to them, they felt that this might be dishonoring their fathers, without realizing that they're dishonoring Allah Azza wa Jal by doing what they're doing. And the other thing is, they think that their fathers knew more than them. Whereas it's very clear that there is no goodness in worshipping these idols. And that's what Ibrahim alayhi salam, he gets back to. He says, don't you see what you worship? Don't you see that these things that you worship, these idols that you worship, they can't benefit you in any way. They can't harm you in any way. Whether it's you worshiping them, whether it was your fathers worshiping them, that doesn't change the fact that these idols, they can't help you in any way. And so the people, they don't have any answer to this. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he tells them that, one day I'm going to get a chance to destroy these idols and show you that there is no harm that comes from them. And they can't even protect themselves. And so the people, they just ignored this. But then one day, a day of festival, when all the people, they left the town to go out and celebrate. At the time, they used to go out and celebrate when they had a celebration. They went out for the day. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he excused himself. He said he wasn't feeling well. And this is true. He wasn't feeling well because of all the evil and falsehood that he saw around him. He saw people worshiping all these other idols. He saw injustice being done. And all these things, they made him feel very unwell. And so he stays behind. And his people, they leave the area where the idols are. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes to these idols and he says to them, why aren't you talking? Why is it that you can't even talk? You are worshipped and you can't even talk. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he destroys all these idols and leaves the biggest of them intact. And he goes and he puts the axe or whatever it was that he used to destroy the other idols, he goes and puts that around the neck of this idol. And he has this plan in his mind that he thinks will show them the truth, and this will cause them to leave the worship of these idols. And so now the people, they come back to their town after the celebration, and they go for the offerings that they give to their idols. And when they go there, they find that their idols have all crumbled. They've all been destroyed except for the one idol. And they're furious. They say, who has done this to our idols? Who has done this to our gods? And so a group of people who were present when Ibrahim alayhi salam was trying to get them to leave idol worship, they say, we remember this guy who mentioned these idols, who had mentioned that he wanted to harm these idols. His name is Ibrahim. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is brought forth. And basically he's going to be held accountable for destroying these idols. And so they say to Ibrahim alayhi salam after he's brought forth to them, did you do this to our idols? He says, بَلْ فَعَلَ كَبِيرُهُمْ. This large idol that you see, the only remaining idol, the only idol still intact, this idol did it to the rest. And then he says, why don't you ask these other idols that have been destroyed? Why don't you ask them what happened? And he knows that the answer will be that these idols, they can't communicate with you. And so when Ibrahim alayhi salam says this, he says, well, ask these idols, and they tell Ibrahim alayhi salam, you know these idols can't talk to us. You know they can't speak to you. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's trying to get them to understand, these idols, they can't hear you. They can't see you. They can't benefit you. They can't harm you. Forget all of that. They can't even protect themselves. Why is it then that you worship these idols? Why is it then that you sacrifice for these idols, that you give all these things to these idols as a sacrifice, when it should be Allah Azza wa Jal, the one who created us, the one who nourished us, the one who cares for us, the one who created everything, including that which you created. It should be Allah who we turn to when we worship. And so the people, they have no response, and they don't know what to say. And so they leave Ibrahim alayhi salam, but they decide that they're going to punish Ibrahim alayhi salam for this. And so what is the punishment they come up with? They try to think of something that's very painful. What's a very painful punishment? Being burnt is a very painful punishment. So they say, we're going to burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they create this great fire. And it takes days for this fire to be brought to the level that they want it to be at. Because they want this punishment to really hurt Ibrahim alayhi salam. Not only in their minds, not only are they enacting revenge for the idols that were destroyed, but they're also trying to set an example for the people. That when you go against our ways, when you try to change that which we're upon, this will be your outcome as well. And so after they do this, the fire is so great that it is said that they couldn't even come close to this fire. It was so hot, it was so large that they couldn't even come close to this fire. In fact, they have to build something kind of like a catapult through which they could catapult Ibrahim alayhi salam into the fire, throw him into the fire. And so that's what happens. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he has tawakkul in Allah, he has trust in Allah, he has belief in Allah that Allah will protect him. And so, as he's being thrown into this fire, people are probably thinking that Ibrahim alayhi salam now is very scared. That Ibrahim alayhi salam now is about to get burnt, and he will reap the rewards of his actions, which is that he destroyed our idols. And instead, while Ibrahim alayhi salam is being thrown into the fire, Allah Azza wa Jal, he commands the fire and says, be cool and be safe for Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so it is said that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he spends some time in this fire, whether it's hours, days, weeks, Allahu A'lam. But the people, they are expecting this fire to have completely burnt Ibrahim, burned Ibrahim alayhi salam. And instead, Allah Azza wa Jal makes this fire something that is a very comfortable place for Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's also salaman li Ibrahim. It's also a place that is very peaceful for him. And so, you know, a lot of times we think that these miracles are something that we kind of know about, but do we really believe in it? Well, Allah Azza wa Jal, he is the one who created the fire. And he is the one who created the fire and gave it the characteristics that cause it to burn us. And so the same one who gives it these characteristics to burn us can also give it other characteristics that can cause it to be a safe abode, a safe place for Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so he comes out from this fire completely unscathed. And the people, they don't know what to do. They're very scared. They don't know who this man is. In fact, they even say that your Lord, you must have a really good God You must have someone who is really good, that he was able to protect you and save you from this great punishment that we had established for you. And this is a way of Allah Azza wa Jal telling us that when you are obedient to me, when you worship me, when you don't fear anyone except myself, when you put your trust in me, then there is no one who can harm you. I will always be there protecting you. And even if there is any harm that comes upon you, that harm comes upon you because of my will, because I had willed for it to happen. And in the hereafter, I shall give you great reward. I shall give you great reward for all the sacrifices that you made, and you will be greatly happy that you made those sacrifices. You will never be someone who is filled with regrets for doing so. And so now what happens is, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he has been protected from the fire, and the story gets famous, as you can imagine. People start talking about what happened, and they say, well, we built this great fire, and Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was thrown into the fire, and he left the fire completely unscathed. Nothing happened to him. And so the king at that time, he also hears of this. And so he summons Ibrahim alayhi salam. And inshallah, with this, we're going to conclude tonight's session because it's almost time for Maghrib. He summons Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he basically asks him, who do you worship? And he says, I worship the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Your Lord and my Lord, the Lord of the heavens and the earth. The one who gave me life and who's going to cause me to die. So the king, he obviously knows what Ibrahim alayhi salam is talking about, but just for the sake of argument, he says, I give life and I also give death. And so he calls for two people to be brought forth. And he commands the first one to be killed, and he is killed, and he says, I've caused this person to die. And another person who was due to get killed as a punishment, he says, and I've forgiven this person, so in a way I've given him life. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam, he could have gone back and forth with him on this, and he could have said, well, you're not actually giving him life. You're not actually giving that person death or causing that person to die. It is Allah who gives life and who gives death or takes away that life. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he has other great arguments. He has other great proofs that he has to talk about who this Lord is. And so he says, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to deal with this stupid answer. There's no other way to describe this. I'm not going to deal with the stupid answer. And instead, Ibrahim alayhi salam says, my Lord is the one who causes the sun to rise from the east and to set in the west. If you are a God, if you are our Lord, then cause it to rise from the west. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, he says that they're dumbfounded. The people who had disbelieved at that point, they're dumbfounded. They don't know what to do anymore. And with that, inshallah, we conclude the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam in the beginning part of it. And inshallah, we're going to continue in the next session talking about the other stories related to Ibrahim alayhi salam, as well as his son, as well as his grandson too, inshallah. Because verily in Ibrahim alayhi salam there is a great example for us, a life full of sacrifices, a life that through which we can learn how to give da'wah, we can learn how to call people to Islam using the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We see the conviction that he has, the trust that he has in Allah Azza wa Jal. We see all these things, and we see the great wisdom he used in calling people to the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. And we hope that we can benefit from this. And we also hope that we can benefit from the great tawakkul that he had in Allah Azza wa Jal. As he's being thrown into this massive fire, most of us, we would just conclude to ourselves that that's it, this is my end. But he had his trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Allah Azza wa Jal protected him. And so this is also a reminder for us, put your trust in Allah, the Lord of the world, the one who created you, the one who is in charge of all the affairs, whether it's the affairs of the universe or it's your personal affairs. Allah Azza wa Jal is responsible for those. He is in control of everything in your life. So turn to Him, worship Him, and ask Him for guidance. And whenever you seek assistance, seek it from Him. And do not be scared of those in this life who threaten you when you're upon the path that Allah Azza wa Jal has picked for you. Because if you're on the path of Allah Azza wa Jal, then insha'Allah, no harm can come upon you except that which was written by Allah Azza wa Jal. And then Allah Azza wa Jal can bless you with the greatest blessing, which is gaining His pleasure in this world to attain the hereafter, to attain the pleasure of His in the hereafter through Jannah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to join us with the messengers and prophets and the companions of the prophets in Jannat al-Firdaus al-A'la. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.